Welcome to the Northeast Divide podcast. I'm your host, John Lane, and as ever, I'm joined by Anth as we discuss the two largest football clubs in the Northeast, Newcastle United and Sunderland. We are sponsored by Mama Lane Crafts, so please, if you're interested in customizable clothing or cups or all sorts of stuff, do check them out. The link to their pages are in the description to this podcast or YouTube video if you're watching us on YouTube. That's our sponsor bit done. You get 10% off if on your first order. So if you want to make an order, please mention Northeast Divide podcast. Anth, what a Sunday you lot had, eh? Like 100% record in the league now. Massive statement win that at home to Sheffield Wednesday, who survived on the last day against you at the Stadium of Light last season. So talk to us. I mean, I'm assuming you watched the game.
I did, and you know what? It exceeded all expectations. I was not expecting that. I was expecting a really tough encounter, as always with Sheffield Wednesday. I mean, the battles that we used to have with them in League One were pretty much legendary. I mean, they're a good side. They're a great football club. They've got great backing, so well supported. Fantastic ground, obviously, with a lot of history. So I was expecting a very tight game, especially after their opening day result, but it didn't quite turn out like that. I mean, I think I predicted. Did I predict 2-1? I think I did. But so yeah, 4-0. A bumper crown of 40,022 in fine voice, even though it didn't really come across that well on the telly box at times. But yeah, we were in fine voice. So I think Reggie Lebris struggled to understand sometimes what the supporters were singing at him, like "give us a wave," etc., because he just stood sort of stationary with his hands behind his back. But he'll get there. So a magnificent performance. I mean, I don't know where to start. I mean, pretty much every one of the first 11 was faultless. Just great. I mean, the likes of Dennis Cirkin, having him back and injury free, I think makes a hell of a difference to the way we play and the way we attack, because he's consistent and he's attacking prowess as well. I mean, from that set piece, which was straight from the training ground, and what a fantastic header. Always headed down, and he got the goal. So I think he makes a great difference. But every player on the pitch turned in a performance. So yeah, Chris Rigg especially. I mean, obviously Brown was out with an injury. It was very last minute. He was on the peripheral, but he fully deserved his place in the starting 11. And I mean, he's going to put himself sort of, in the shop window again. But he signed a new contract with us, and apparently the supporters had a lot to play a part in that, because they were quite vocal and they've backed him and they're supportive of him. So he loves it, man. He was magnificent on Sunday. I mean, there was one pass that he made which was just exquisite, and he's only going to get better. I mean, 09 chipping in with another goal as well. And can I just say a very special mention to Mienda? That young lad has copped a hell of a lot of grief off our support base. Not all of them, but a hell of a lot of grief. And he's a raw talent. It's not his fault that, he's been put up front on his own. It's the only option we've had. He had a pretty good pre-season. He didn't tear up any trees at Hibernian last season on loan. In fact, I don't think he got hardly any game time. But I tell you what, on Saturday, he was fantastic. And the first goal, I know it was a mistake from them, but the finish was fantastic. He was big, he was strong, he was quick. We've missed that pace up front, and it was just a well-deserved result. I mean, for the first 7, 8, 9 minutes, we were under the cosh a little bit from Chef Wed. There was a lot of pressure, and I thought, they're going to really go for it, and they did, but there was no real end product. And they had a bit of the ball in the second half, but to be fair, they didn't really threaten a lot. So just a magnificent result. And that high pressing game, which I didn't think would keep going for the full 90 minutes, we did it nigh on for the full 90 minutes. And just Reggie Lebris, I just applaud you, because if that's the way it's going to be, Reggie Lebris, I love thee, basically.
It was not reminiscent of normal Sunderland opening day performances. You looked in control. I mean, I turned the game on from about the 10th, 15th minutes. So you were already 1-0 up when I turned it on. And then I saw the second goal, and then but it was completely one-sided. There was one chance that Sheffield Wednesday had, and I think it was offside anyway. But they just, you've just absolutely dominated them. And yeah, what, as I say, not reminiscent of what your normal home displays have been like. And I think he's tend to have struggled loads at home, like, and not just like last season or like a couple of seasons. Like, it feels like for like last 10, 15 years, you've really struggled to have that home form because, and I don't know if it's the pressure that the players are struggling with in terms of kind of feeling like there's too much expectation on them or what. But you played like a team at home who wanted to take charge of things. And I think it was the second goal where basically there's a block in midfield and basically your striker runs onto it and finishes it. That it, it's that kind of urgency and that kind of movement that you want to see. And the other thing I want to mention is that midfield three had an average age of 19. I mean, God, I mean,
Phenomenal.
what potential there? And look, I know we talk about the model and how, are these players going to stay with Sunderland for a long time, or is this a matter of building their value up and then when a bigger club comes in, you're gonna, it's gonna help kind of fund everything else. But that's got to be really promising for you as a fan that your midfield's that mature a performance and that young.
Oh, I mean, special mention again to Job Bellingham. Again, another player who towards the end of last season got a little bit of constructive criticism, but I mean, he played a hell of a lot of games, and again, a young lad, and he was just in total control, and he's playing in a more deep sort of position in midfield. I think now Labrie has decided he is a midfielder predominantly, and I know we've sort of played him as a makeshift striker the odd occasion last season. He did really well, especially against Cardiff City away. But like you say, the average age, I mean, it was just astounding. And like you say, we have struggled in for a number of seasons, opening game of the season at home, especially pressure from the crowd, maybe. But it's different this time round. Like you said previously, it feels different, and the crowd a little bit more understanding. Labrie, I mean, I don't know what he's done with regards to pre-season. I mean, normally it's experimental, isn't it? You want to work out your first 11, who's going to be staying, who's going to be going, which obviously we're going to talk about a little bit later. But the way he had us playing, it looked like we'd been playing that way for a number of games, not just for opening 2 games of the season. I'm not going to really acknowledge the Preston game in the Caribou Cup because it was a completely different first 11. And I mean, that old chestnut, the cup is not our sort of priority this season and all that jazz, even though it would have been nice to have a cup run. But it was just fantastic, just brilliant.
Yeah, knocked out the competition before Newcastle even entered it. We'll just get that out there.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. No, I think
God.
I think if you offer any championship team to win their first 2 opening games, and then nice mug, yeah. If for those listening and not watching on YouTube, Anth is drinking from a Newcastle 0 Sunderland 3 mug. But it's all right. I mean, who had the latest 3-0? That would be my question.
Myself. Yeah, wide
What I
open,
was
haven't
gonna, yeah, you have. Yeah, what I was about to say though is that any championship club would take winning the opening 2 league games and get knocked out of the League Cup. And as horrible as that is, you don't really want to get knocked out of cups because as fans, you want to see your club go on and lift a trophy. And that's, for me, that's a massive aim for Newcastle this year, certainly to be competitive in both domestic cups. Like it is, you've won the right games, I suppose, and you really imposed yourself. Let's talk about Newcastle. So I'll talk to you through Saturday. So I'd been at the True Faith Live event on the Friday, had a pretty heavy night. Woke up on Saturday morning with a pretty bad headache. Stayed at my mates in Sandyford, and then I had to make my way back across to Bladen. I had a tip run that I had to do for the house at 10 o'clock.
Grim.
So I managed to survive all of that. I mean,
One
my mate sorted it out with a decent breakfast as well, which was great.
smashing.
And then the wife was taking the kids to a birthday party, so I was like, right, great, right. So as soon as she's left, like within 3 minutes, the washing's all been hung out. I'm like, right, I'm gonna get the bus into town. I'm gonna meet a couple of the lads, and we went for something to eat. So I was on the bus at around about 20 to 12. On my way into town. 3 o'clock kickoff, by the way, everyone. So that's kind of what we were aiming for. Went for some food and then went for drinks at in one of the bars not too far from your wife's salon. And yeah, very much just kind of really excited about the day. First game of the season, you got all this, excitement building. You're playing a newly promoted side, and you're thinking, well, it's all right. We're going to turn up. We're going to win. I mean, you will have seen on my prediction, I was going for a comfortable 2-0. Now, we won 1-0. It was far from comfortable. Southampton like to play the ball out. They like to play the ball out from the back. They like to play possession football. That's what they did all last year. What we really need to do is to play a high press, win the ball high up the pitch, and create chances from there, which we managed to do once, and we got a goal from that whilst we had 10 men. Now, let's talk about that red card.
Oh dear me!
What was your feeling, Anth, as a neutral, in inverted commas, when you saw that incident? Because I mean, I'll give my thoughts in a minute, but I'd like to hear yours.
You can't. It's a tricky one. And I've watched a lot of pundits talk about it, and I've watched sort of the referee watch on Sky Sports News, etc., talking about it. It was, I mean, the way he went down was absolutely disgraceful, wasn't it? And I know Graham Souness has had his 2 penneth worth as well, and I was like, well, he didn't hang fire, and he didn't hang fire, he didn't hold back at all, didn't he? Did he? But no, I thought it was harsh. It was harsh the way he went down as well. But if you go in like that, there's no disrespect to the player that got sent off. But if you go in like that, sometimes a red card's to be expected, even without the amateur dramatics, because, yeah, I mean, that was terrible. I mean, he should be ashamed of himself as a professional footballer to go down like that. It was an absolute disgrace. So I know you're probably going to have some stronger terms to use, no doubt, John, yes?
Well, I was pissed off with our player
right,
more than I was with theirs. So I like the fact that if you go into a player head first to confront someone, you are putting yourself at risk by doing that. I've seen Joey Barton and James Perch in the 11-12 season do the exact same action that Brereton Diaz did when Gervinho went head to head with Barton. Barton hit the floor, and that was a red card for Gervinho. And then Pepe Reina did it to James Perch, and he got sent off in a famous 2-0 win against Liverpool when Jose Enrique had to go and goal for them. So look, if it was turned on its head, and there was a penalty that we won last year where Cher went down like a sack of spuds. There was contact, but he went down like a sack of spuds. Penalty was given, and what you have to say is that if Brereton Diaz had gone in with the same kind of action first, you wonder whether Cher would have done the same. Now, he may not have done. And some people are saying, "Oh, well, we've seen that," and and he hasn't before. I just don't think that. I think if you're a professional footballer, 9 times out of 10, that's what you expect the other player to do. And we've seen it before. So for me, you have to give the red card, whether it's shit and it's ridiculous. I think there is an arguable point about the provocation, though, because what actually happens is the whistle's blown. After the whistle's blown, Brereton Diaz pushes Cher over, physically pushes him right over, which is why he reacts the way that he does. So it's an off-the-ball incident. Like, there's a dead ball. There's no reason why he should be going in the way that he has. Then he obviously goes in, and the heads come together. He then hits the ground like a sack of shit. And I think, and I suppose it's that question of, was it right just to give him a yellow card, or actually had he earned a red because there was unnecessary kind of provocation beforehand? So should both players got a red? Should have been a red for Brereton Diaz and a yellow for Cher? For me, I think it's definitely a red for Cher, and you could argue that VAR may have given something to Brereton Diaz, but it was. I think what was really interesting is the way that the crowd then got into his head, because every time he had the ball, like, it was deafening boos. There was one point where he got the ball, Brereton Diaz, and he's running along the wing. You may have seen this on social media, and Sean Longstaff goes and wipes him out with a good tackle, but he makes sure you can tell he makes sure he follows through. And the roar and the volume of St James's Park. St James's Park can be a terrifying place for opposition players when they've been wronged, like when they feel they've been wronged or there's an injustice there. It's even more ferocious. And Brereton Diaz didn't grow into it. He basically like crawled back into his shell. Now, that's not why we won the game. We won the game because Alex McCarthy's a fucking idiot as a goalkeeper, and he gave the ball to Isak in the box, who then passed it to Joe Linton, who finished it brilliantly. The other reason why we won the game is because then, to man, they defended like absolute heroes all the way through that second half, and they won the game in a really, really difficult way, but they did it and they saw it through. And that's a game we probably draw or lose last year. So for me, that was really, really encouraging from that point of view, that we managed to see the game out and do what we needed to do there. But yeah, I mean, what more can you ask for in that situation? 0-0, I'm thinking we've probably lost this game, because the way that Southampton play, that's the perfect way to play against 10 men keeping the ball. I mean, so for me, class result really in the end.
Really good, I think. Was Shaw sent off in the 28th minutes or 62 minutes, down to 10 men? That's a hell of a result. I mean, obviously, it wasn't a fantastic vintage performance. Obviously, you can't perform in the way you want to with down to 10 men. But I just think, and I tell you what was interesting as well, I read with regards to Livramento. Obviously, Trippier was substitute, wasn't he? And he was on the sidelines and he was encouraging Livramento as well. And he was, giving advice out, and he hadn't spat his dummy out as such. He was encouraging from the sidelines, and I thought that's fantastic as well to see that from a player who could easily say, why am I not in the first 11? So, and like you say, the crowd, when the crowd feel wronged, I mean, they let the player who's responsible for that know, and he shrank. He just shrank, didn't he? He just shriveled.
Yeah.
So it takes big players to stand up and perform in front of that and face that backlash and that much abuse, and he didn't respond, did he? So, but I'll give you his credit where credit's due. To get through 62 minutes down to 10 men and get a result is in the Premier League is pretty much outstanding. Like, so all credit is, I suppose.
Yeah, he says through gritted teeth. I think I didn't know that about Trippier. I didn't know that he was kind of quite encouraging from the sidelines. Look, I think I find it really hard to go on any platform and criticize Kieran Trippier. Certainly not for his attitude. His attitude's always been top notch. I do think, and we're going to kind of very smoothly segue here into transfer talk. I do think there's a good chance that he still goes this window. He played for the under-21s against Sunderland last night, as did Matt Targett, who's been linked with a loan move away. So I don't think kind of getting minutes for the under-21s, although yes, that's going to help you build fitness. I think it's probably not a big indication that you're going to be a key part of the squad. And I think starting Livramento ahead of Trippier is a massive statement, because Gordon played like 7 minutes at the Euros and he started. Trippier obviously played a lot more football at the Euros, didn't play at all. But I think there's a bit of a passing of the baton, and I think Livramento does deserve a start. But I think the only difference I would say is that there were times during the game where you realise actually what you've got with Trippier when he's not on the field. So, the technical ability in terms of his delivery, Livramento just doesn't have that yet. And I think that can come in time. I think Lewis Hall struggled defensively, was probably a little bit naive at times, trying to play the ball forward, and a couple of those passes were intercepted. I mean, I think his pass completion was around about 55%, which, and I understand we were down to 10 men and, backs against the wall and just trying to get rid of the ball at times. But there were some times where he did things and you thought that you need to think defense first. And I think, again, it's coachable. And I think he's definitely off left back of the future. But Lloyd Kelly came off the bench and he looked like he didn't look like out of place at all. He looked like he just slotted in. So we've got some interesting decisions to make ahead of next week. I said I'd talk about transfers. So the links to Trippier are kind of gone quiet, but I think there's certainly a path there potentially that he could end up going before the end of the window. The one that isn't quiet and that never seems to be going away is Marc Guehi. From your perspective as a Sunderland fan, like does this not feel like it's been going on for like the last 3 months?
It's been going on a long, long time, hasn't it? I mean, they're pretty good at bartering, though, aren't they, Crystal Palace? And they continue to do so. And the noises coming out of Selhurst Park with regards to Guehi is that he's settled, he's happy, etc. But surely, if a slightly higher bid comes along, they've got to take it. They've got to take it. And I know you mentioned it again the other week with regards to that would be like a statement signing, because he would be a fantastic sign. I mean, the way he performed in the Euros, like you previously said as well, he was phenomenal. He was just Mr. Cool and just consistent, and he looked like he'd been in that England defence for a number of years. So yeah, it's ongoing, isn't it? It's ongoing, and obviously some of the names being bandied around for the exit door. Almiron still rumoured to be allegedly leaving. I know the MLS transfer window's closed, hasn't it? I'd never even heard of the team. I'd never even heard of the team that were. I've never heard of them. Charlotte, Tracy, I don't know, Bernadette. I've never heard of them. Honestly, I was like, no.
Charlotte's a place in North Carolina. If you
okay, then.
Yeah.
Nah, I haven't got Scooby. So no disrespect to MLS. But yeah, and obviously Callum Wilson, and then obviously you mentioned Trippier. So they're not going to go away those rumours. But the Guehi one's an interesting one, and I think you've still got your hat in the ring. So we'll have to see what happens there.
So I read today on The Athletic. What they said was that Newcastle are the only ones that are in serious negotiations about the player.
Right.
However, Liverpool are said to be interested. Now, what's really interesting, right? So since Amanda and Murdad have left, we're a lot less leaky as a club. So it's very much. It almost feels like we've gone back to the Ashley days in terms of the public communications. It's very, very quiet. No one says anything, and then a transfer happens, and that's it. Unless there's noise from the other side. Now, Steve Parish has been interviewed a couple of times, and he's been quite happy to talk about it. Say, he's called him a superstar player, generational talent. All of this, it requires a bid high enough. No one's really kind of matched that. All this kind of stuff, right? But I don't think he's making those statements unless Guehi wants to go. I just don't. Because why would you? All you need to do is just say, he's our player. We're not going to talk about it. And that's it. And just go on from there. They've spent a lot of time, as you say. They gave him he wore the captain's armband at Brentford at the weekend for that game, and obviously played pretty much the full game as well. So they're doing a lot of things to show him that he's loved. But I think he's told the club already, look, like this is an opportunity that I can't turn down, and I want to go. So I think now he's at the point where he's trying to just get as much out of Newcastle as he possibly can. We've obviously put a bid. I think it says we've put like 4 bids in, but you talk to journalists, you talk to people like Harry, and what Harry says is that this isn't like kind of where you send a fax off, which then arrives, and then they get the fax, and then they send back an offer. Like these guys are joining each other on Teams meetings and Teams calls. And they're having a chat, and this, and they'll be saying, well, could we do like 60 million, plus like 5 million if this happens, and all that kind of thing. That's how those conversations happen. And I think the other word coming from Newcastle is that they're not under the impression that there's been 4 bids rejected. It's just that there's conversations going on. That's kind of the word or the dialogue. So I would do, well, Harry's suggestion that he made on one of our other podcasts. He said what he would do is he would go and, certainly make it clear that there's other interest for other player, such as Joe Gomez, such as possibly Malik Thiaw. There's all these other players potentially. Agree a deal and go back to Palace and say, right, I've got this. Are you going to take our last offer for Marc Guehi, yes or no? And put them in that position where they've got to make that decision. And if they say no, we're not going to continue, right, that's fine. You walk away. You've got your centre half. But I think you have to look at other options to almost get that leverage, and then hopefully that gives you the opportunity then to move on to sort the right wing if you get a chance to do that before the end of next Friday. It's 11 o'clock on Friday that the transfer window closes. So we have not got long to get that business done. We're talking 10 days now to get that all over the line. But enough about Marc fucking Guehi, because honestly, what a saga. Anth, you've got some. You seem all of a sudden seem to be springing into some action in the transfer market, and seems quite promising.
It does. Like I messaged you earlier, we could have an abundance of strike as well. A couple less than a handful, maybe. I don't know, but it's a tricky one now because obviously Miende turned in a hell of a performance last Sunday, but at the same time, can he keep it going for the rest of the season? And Rusin, I like Rusin. He's a hard-working fella up front, but I think he is possibly more of a winger. I don't think he's an out-and-out striker, so we are in desperate need of a striker or two. So the latest rumour mill is, and apparently it might be happening tomorrow, on loan with the option to buy, is French forward Wilson Isidore. Yeah. So 23-year-old, currently plays for Zenit St. Petersburg, and apparently it's accurate, and an obligation to buy clause has been triggered. So apparently, if we're taking him on loan, it will be triggered, or whatever can be triggered. So, and the Mendy rumours will not go away. So his agent has been very vocal over the last few days, saying that it will happen. It's only a matter of time. We don't exactly know when, but as you say, the transfer window is going to close very soon. And you know what? You think you've got all the time in the world, and then it's just like, it's like dashing around sort of at 10 to 8 in your local supermarket or local shop trying to get everything in it. So mostly booze on a Friday night. But anyway, so yeah, apparently we've increased the offer for Mendy to somewhere between 1.7 million and 2.6 million, including bonuses. So, but apparently Italian side Lecce and Sampdoria are interested in him as well still. So, but his heart is on Sunderland, allegedly. His agent has been very vocal and said he wants to come. So I think he'd be a great signing. And if the other lad, Wilson Isidore, signs, he's an unknown quantity, but, two pretty decent strikers, so happy with that. So let's get them over the line, please.
The other thing to bear in mind as well, bringing this other striker in, is that competition breeds better performance, and you only have to look at Isak and Wilson to see that argument. Isak, I keep saying this, Isak's a better player when Wilson's on the bench, and Wilson's a better player because Isak's around.
Yeah,
both of them, when they're both fit, they both have to be the top of their game. Shola, just years ago, Shola used to be shite because there wasn't any competition.
Yeah.
So what would happen is, if Bellamy was injured, Shola would play, but who was behind Shola? Lamar and Loa. So Shola didn't have to really push himself to get in the team. Once Demba Ba signed, years later, and Shearer's long gone, Shola upped it a level, and you need that competition. You need someone to be breathing down your neck, or you need someone ahead of someone to think, right, actually, I need to put my ideas up. I need to raise my game, because otherwise I'm not going to keep my place. And that's the way you have to look at it. And you've had no strikers at all. So, and to try and bring in two is difficult to do at the best of times. So if you manage to get two in, and I imagine the obligation will be, if you get promoted, that it's a permanent signing. And Christ, if he manages to do that for you, then fantastic. And you are in, because we're 2 games in, and there's only 3 teams in the league that have 6 points. There's a reason why we can start using the P word. Yes, we've got 44 games to go. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But next, Anth, you play Burnley.
Oh, right,
Who
Burnley.
also have won 2 games.
So Burnley, obviously a good result against Luton Town, was a 4-1, sorry. And then they absolutely walloped Cardiff City 5-0, didn't they? So 9 goals for, 1 against. We've got 6 goals for, no goals conceded so far. It's going to be interesting, because I think they've sold 2 players for quite high transfer fees over the last week or two. So they've sold, winger Wilson Odobert for the region of 25 million to Tottenham. And also, Sander Berg is having a medical apparently with Fulham. He's had a medical today, hasn't he? So they've accepted a bid of £25 million for him. I don't know if that's over the line. So, but I mean, they've kept the squad from mainly most of the players from when they were in the Premier League. I know they didn't have a great time there, but it just shows you how certain, can I class them as a yo-yo club? Quite possibly. How when they come down to the Championship, that quality that they didn't quite show in the Premier League, it can really come to the fore in the Championship. And you know what, they'll be there or thereabouts towards the end of the season. Turf Moor, I mean, it's not a pleasant place to go to, is it? So I mean, they'll get a lot of points at home and obviously away as well. So yeah, it's going to be a really, really tough game. And I don't know. Prediction wise, I'm a bit unsure at the moment. Are we going to come along to that a bit later, or would you like a prediction now?
Should we? I tell you what. We'll put our viewers and listeners in suspense, and they can keep an eye on our social media channels when our predictions come out. So,
yes,
as you'll probably be aware, Anth and I will always do a little bit of a video prediction a day or two before our game's due to be played. And we are going to keep an eye on that because I think we may do some sort of competition / forfeit-y kind of thing. And keep a track of how the predictions go. Well, yeah, someone suggested something to us, and I think my exact words were, "I can only do that if I'm guaranteed to win." And the suggestion was that whoever lost had to wear the other shirt, and I'm like, "There's no way I'm sitting through a podcast wearing a red and white shirt. It's not happening."
I can't. I'm breaking out in a headache and stroke migraine just thinking about that.
So we'll think of something else. But yeah, just couldn't do it. Just absolutely couldn't do it. No, I think this is a massive measure of where you are, really, because I think Cardiff away, great result. Sheffield Wednesday at home, great result. Playing a team that's just been relegated from the Premier League, who the last year that they were in the Championship absolutely dominated everybody. That is a better measuring stick, really, of kind of where you are in this kind of promotion race overall, and whether you're in that promotion race or not, to put it nicely. Because I think if they turn up and wallop yous, then that'll kind of maybe just reset expectations a little bit. But if you win that game, it's going to go the other way, and everyone's going to think that you're going to absolutely walk the league. And it's how do you get that balance between expectation and what can happen? So we've got Bournemouth on Sunday. We've already talked about our search for a centre half because Cher's now suspended for the next 3 games. So at the minute, we've got Emil Kraft in at right centre back, who can do a job, but is not a long-term solution. Him and Dan Burn in the centre. And then there's talk about what we do at left back, about whether Lloyd Kelly comes straight in or do we give Lewis Hall another game. I knowing Eddie Howe, I don't think he's going to make too many changes. I think he's just going to make the one change that he has to make, just to try and keep things a bit more stable. And then hopefully, as long as we don't get someone sent off stupidly within the first half hour, we might be in a position of the last half hour to make some changes to change the game. But one thing I've noticed is on Saturday, we seemed to we started 4-3-3, but then we almost went into a 4-4-2 after about 20 minutes. And then that was and then certainly after the sending off, we were 4-3-2. So I just wonder if kind of that's the new kind of thought process, and that actually we're now more morphing into a 2 up top team rather than having that 4-3-3 that we've played literally for the last 2.5 years.
A little bit of a tactical switch around then, yes. I think you pointed something out that I didn't know earlier, that since Eddie Howe became manager at Newcastle United, you've never beaten Bournemouth, is that correct? You pointed out?
Not in the league. We've beaten them. We've beat them once in the League Cup, and it was an own goal, and it was just after the World Cup. So I think the World Cup finished on the Sunday, and I think we played Bournemouth. It was either Tuesday or the Wednesday, and then and it was literally like a really freak own goal that we scored from. But that's the only game that we've beaten Bournemouth in since Eddie Howe became manager at Newcastle. Now, I don't think he's doing an Agent Howe job, by any stretch. You know, I don't think he's that kind of guy, but it's kind of a monkey we want to get off the bat, really. And I think we have to be honest about like Bournemouth, like they've lost Solanke, and they've got 65 million quid in, great, but money doesn't necessarily get you quality unless you use it. And I don't think we've seen any kind of impression about what they do. I mean, the biggest news Bournemouth have had this week is that they've just signed a new partnership with WWE 2K sports game. Like what?
Brilliant stuff.
Oh yeah, great,
I know,
fantastic.
yeah.
I mean, that's not gonna win you on Sunday. I'm just not sure. Bournemouth were really good last year, but I think a big part of their success was Solanke being able to put the ball away. And initially, I thought Solanke looked like a good signing for Spurs, and now I'm looking at it, and I know he's only played one game, right? And I don't want to be too harsh, but now I'm looking at it and I'm going, yeah, but he only really had that one good season for Bournemouth, and the 5 before that, he was pretty average. He wasn't amazing at Liverpool, so I do wonder if Bournemouth have gone, 65 million, Reed, that'll do us. And if they've managed to do a good one, but then they need an outlet, and do they have that, and have they really done anything? So I don't know. I fancy I certainly fancy to get at least a point. I don't think we'll get beat on Sunday. But yeah, I would like to see us go there and get 3 points. And then that'll set us really nicely for a week where Sandro Tonali is going to return, probably in the League Cup at Forest.
Yes.
So it could be a very interesting week. Now, the League Cup, Anth, I don't know if you're aware, is a competition that Newcastle are about to enter and haven't been knocked out of yet.
Okay, thanks for that, John.
No problem. Right, everybody, we are going to leave it there. And thank you so much again for your time. I will remind you once again that was sponsored by Mama Lane Crafts. Your first order with them gets you a 10% discount. They do all sorts of personalized stuff, and will look to expand the collection to include some Christmas gear as well. So do keep an eye on their social media platforms. We will, of course, be sharing all of that. The links are in the description of this podcast and this video. I also want to remind you that if you liked the video, press like. If you enjoyed the podcast, please rate it. If you've got feedback on how we can do better, please leave us comments, whether that is on YouTube, whether that's on your podcast platform, or whether that's on our social media platforms, which you can find at Northeast Divide. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. But this has been the Northeast Divide. Thank you very much, and goodbye.